All right. I don't think there's anyone here yet, so I'm not actually going to start, but I thought, let's go ahead and get going on this. That way, if I'm having any troubles, uh, you know, we can sort those out I before people start showing up. Okay, so 3 minutes to go. If you if there's someone here when you pop in, definitely feel free to say hey. That way I know there's somebody here. I'll pay more attention to the chat. You know, just good to know if there's somebody here. If you see me looking away and to the right, it's because that's where my chat thing is. I guess I could lift it up a little. Just gotta. I don't have a multi-screen setup, so I don't have an easy way to put um, the chat. Hey, so it's good to see you. Is it Salta Solis, Salta Souls? Uh, I'm glad you made it, especially because you said you were excited to hear about how this all came to be. So that's wonderful. We got about 2 minutes before the official start goes. But if you had any questions about this or anything related to this album or really my production music in general, you can feel free to ask that in the chat. Obviously, the more focused on this it is, the better it is for this stream. But that's fine. I'm happy to answer anything. Oh, good to hear. Happy to answer any questions you have. Address any like, hey, what about this? How did this happen? Anything like that. And that's sort of the point of doing this. And of course, to spread the word about my music. But you already know about my music. Got a cup of coffee here, a little bit of water. Try not to make it too obnoxious. You guys stay hydrated just a little bit. All right, 1 minute to go. So this is the Ableton file. I'm gonna start just by kind of rolling through this. Um, I don't know if you're an Ableton user or a DAW user, uh, you probably have opinions on my organization and the way I've set this up a little bit. Obviously, that's fine. Um, looks like I used about 30 tracks, 31 tracks on this. These down here, 32 through 39, are actually like just MIDI that I've stashed down here, and 39 is some pink noise that I used for mixing. Okay, it is 12:30, so we are officially starting. Yeah, hey, no worries, Salta. If you need to bail, like I said, via Blue Sky, this will all be archived. You can catch whatever part of it you didn't catch at your leisure, supposing it's interesting enough that you actually want to do that. All right, so this is the Ableton file for A Hidden Room in My Mind Palace, which is the lead track on my recent 2025, came out May 1st album, Mechanics of Mysticism. Um, this is like I said, it's the first track on the album, but it is the seventh track that I worked on as part of the series. This is um, my uh, the notebook that I used to um, see to guide this process. So it starts off with um, just some information about what I was going after for the whole process, um, some planning stuff here, like my original timeline, which ended up being very unrealistic. Um, these are a list of potential song titles. Anyway, this is the notebook that I used with me, so I'm going to refer to it for reference for various things here. All right, so this song is at 91 BPM, and which is there's exactly two tracks on the album that doubled up on BPM. Um, it's this one and what was track two at the time, the second track I'd made, which ended up being, I think, Embrace the Weird, which is track four. So this track and track four are both at 91 BPM. But oh, no, it's not that one. It's a different track. Anyway, hold on. I don't know why it matters. No, it wasn't that one. It was a different track. I don't know which one, but there's two of them that are at 91 BPM anyway. Just a note that I made. Um, I'm very curious about this now. Why would I write that if it's not true? Oh, okay. So it's what ended up being, I think, track 10, Practical Metaphysics and Applied Esoterica. That's the one that's at the same BPM. Okay. Anyway, this is in B major, and let's see. It uses a 1, 2, 5, 6 chord progression. So that would be B major, C minor, F major, and then G minor. And I used an inversion of the G chord. Not that it really matters, but those are the chords that I used. Um, and yeah, so in terms of like boring musical information, not boring, and that's less important, but it's not super exciting. Um, that's the basics of the song. This song actually started with the morphogene reel, which is the weird sort of talking sound that you hear at the beginning and throughout. That's morphogene, and that is. I gotta put these on. I hope you don't mind here, so I can hear what I'm doing. That is solo this here. And so this right here was the start / inspiration of the track. Yeah, so Ed, I wouldn't say that I plotted things out on paper before composing. It was more as I'd go. I would, so for example, on this one, I picked like the BPM and key and all that stuff, and I just wrote it down as I was like setting up all the drum machines and synthesizers and whatever, just so I would have a note of it. So when I came back to the song later, I'd be like, okay, this is in B major, so I'm not going to accidentally start trying to shove a bunch of out of context notes into it, or out of key notes or whatever. So yeah, so this weird sound effect that you're hearing is the original basis for the track. Not the original basis, but this is what I started with. Morphogene is let's say maybe move the camera and show you. It's a Eurorack module is what it is. It's kind of a granular sampler that allows you to independently control like what part of the sample is looping, how long the loops are, and etc., and kind of scan through a sample, if you will. And I believe this is also, it's not just raw morphogene, it's morphogene run through probably QPass filter, a mimeophone, and then into the Desmodus Versio reverb. So this is like a complete morphogene patch that was, again, sort of where I started with this. I knew that morphogene is kind of one of my favorite instruments, favorite tools that I use, and I knew I wanted to kind of have a morphogene focus track on here. And the hidden room in my mind palace to me suggested that would be a good use. Or when I got to the titling point, I thought that this one would go well with that name because this has this sort of weird, mysterious quality to it. That title is actually it's funny that it ended up as the first track on the album because it's actually the first title or one of the first titles that I came up with that really sort of set the tone for the album. I don't know if you're familiar with the idea of a mind palace. Mind Palace is this idea that you can um, create these sort of structures in your mind that are like a literal mind palace, like a house that you walk into and you can walk around it in your mind, and you can attach memories to the various things in the house, and it's a way to boost your memory. But it's just such a fascinating idea that you can have this whole constructed reality in your mind, and that's a lot of one of the themes of the album is the construction of reality and where that happens. And I thought, well, how cool would it be if you're exploring your mind palace and you find a hidden room? Um, and this is also linked to the fact that I have consistent recurring dreams about finding hidden rooms in my home. No matter what home I live in, it seems like that's just a dream that I will frequently have where I look around and it turns out, behind the refrigerator, there's a door that goes to a hidden room, like a whole suite of rooms sometimes. Okay, so there's an interesting discussion going on in the chat here. Morphogene, no, yeah, like I said, Morphogene is a one of your best decisions in Euro Rec? Bigger decisions, yeah. It's the Morphogene and the Arbar, I imagine, are. Let me see if I can actually show you this here. Are incredible modules. So this is the Morphogene right here, the SoundHack Morphogene. It's this Euro Rack module. This is probably a shit angle. I apologize. You can look it up on Modular Grid or videos about this thing. Curious about. Uh-oh, did I lose my? Looks like I lost my video capture. You guys, I didn't even realize there's no camera going on this. When did that go off? Well, I was trying to show you the Morphogene, but that obviously didn't work. Anyway, you could just look it up online. That's probably easier. It's just a little, it's a Eurorack module. Is what it is, and it's oh, I see. Yeah, this is a shitty webcam. It's what you get when you buy the cheapest webcam you can find. It looks, I mean, the picture looks fine, but it's been real squirrely. So, okay, so I won't worry about. I'll try not to move that again, and hopefully that won't happen again. Yeah, I must have. It's like I said, it's pretty squirrely. So I've had trouble with it in the past. I think it's probably got a bad connection inside. Honestly, is what it is. So okay, but everyone can hear me now. Okay, good deal, good deal. Yeah. So anyway, that was the kind of the inspiration for the track. Um, the Morphogene reel came pretty early. I think I was actually including it, like jamming it out while I was doing the jam. So all these tracks, apart from two of the tracks on the album, my procedure for all of these was kind of the same, which was I would I had a kind of a set collection of synthesizers that was the Strega, Make Noise Strega, Make Noise Oak Host, um, and the Hydrosynth, ASM Hydrosynth, and the Arturia Drum Brute Impact. So those four synths were sort of the basis, the core of nearly every song on the album. Um, and what I did, and this is a thing I came to after the first two tracks of the album. I'll get into it a little more when I get to the track that I started with it, and when I do that one. But this was the sort of procedure that I did for the majority of the album. And what I would do was take those four instruments and a Launchpad Pro, which the current generation Launchpad Pro is using for most of the sequencing. Hook them all up through the MPC. MPC 1 was the kind of my hub, if you will, that everything went through. And would just make a pattern on the drum machine, start playing, make a pattern on one of the synthesizers on the through the Launchpad as it was going, and then switch to the next one, just do that, and then just sort of iterate on those as they played until I had something cool, and then I would just jam improv for 15 to 20 minutes, and re recorded all that, multi-tracked all that to. Um, sorry, my wife just texted me, and it's actually important. It's about the house that we're trying to sell. Recorded that to multi-track, and then went and cut up the multi-tracks into smaller sections um, into the MPC, and did arrangements and sort of built the track in there. Um, and so that looked like on this track, it was I had the here. Let's actually I got this set, so hopefully you can hear me speaking over this. Um, and if you can't actually hear me or whatever, let me know, and I can adjust that. Unsolo this. There we go. So yeah, I just would jam it for like 20 minutes, and then I went through those jams. I did 2 jams for each song, so roughly 40 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes worth of material recorded. I went through those, listened to them, and cut out individual pieces that I thought worked better overall, sort of representative loops where I was doing something interesting with modulation or real-time control at the time, and then inside the MPC started to arrange those, cut them up into sections, arrange them, and then began adding additional instrumentation layers, etc. That process stalled out about, well, it stalled out multiple times. It turns out that cutting that stuff into the MPC is a lot of work. I had done this for one track on my previous album, and so I was like, oh, this would be great. And it was great. But what I didn't anticipate is doing it for one track is a very different thing than doing it for 10 tracks. So 10 of the 12 tracks on this were created in that way. And when you have like 40 minutes, so it's like 400 minutes of music that I was going through. Let's just say it was more like between 300 and 400 minutes of music that I was going to overall for this. A lot of it was very repetitive, but there's still got to go through it and sort of identify, yes, this piece, maybe not that piece. This whole section can be thrown out because it's very dull and repetitive, but this little piece right here is very good. But yeah, doing that for 10 tracks was incredibly time consuming. It was incredibly time consuming and sort of caused me to stall out multiple times, really. But the first time I stalled out early on, and then once I got everything in, I still kind of hit a wall again. And that's when I left the MPC, which I had been trying to produce the entire album inside of that. I had produced my entire previous album inside the MPC. And I decided because I kind of hit a wall, that it was time to maybe consider something different. And that's when I went to Ableton. And this sped up the workflow so much. The MPC is a wonderful platform, but um, it's somewhat limited in some degrees, and working in a screen that's this big is just different than working on a much bigger screen. You know, a very small touch screen, like smaller than an iPad, versus I have like not a huge monitor, but I think this is a 27 or 30-inch monitor here. Mouse and keyboard versus all touch screen. It just streamlined a lot of things, and it just it helped me get past that logjam. Um, so the core instruments here, you got the drum brute is playing the drums, obviously. That Morphagene reel doing the sort of weird soupy sound effects. Strega is doing the kind of really distorted heavy bass, which sounds like this here. Which, if you're familiar with the Strega doll, you're like, yep, that sure is the Strega, all right. It's not even really a bass, it's just kind of a lower end riff that goes through it. And so that was one of the core instruments, but as you can see, this track that has that now it doesn't like go through much of the song here, does it? I mean, this is the whole song right here, and this is it. That's it. So this is an example of kind of what I did. Taking this from the Jam version to this what that involved. This went through the whole track. This is one of the core. This one track right here was one of the core elements of the original track, and it's only in for what is that, like 30 seconds, roughly 30 seconds towards the end of the final track. Um, O Coast was one of the other ones. That's, or what is that? Oh yeah, that's maybe here. I'm not always the best at labeling things, so sometimes it's not clear where certain things ended up getting used. Yeah, that must be it. The leads ended up all coming from the Micro Freak. I added those later. This was a track I was not actually. This must be it. Let's see. Yeah, I think this is. It sounds like the O Coast. Could very well be the O Coast. Going through a bunch of effects. It's probably in modular. It's hard to say. Yeah, that is definitely one of the early components. And then the initial chords came from the Hydrosynth. It's here. And a pretty nice Hydrosynth sound. So when I was cutting this up and putting it into the MPC, I screwed up the chord progression, actually. I had written it initially and jammed it out as 1, 2, 5, 6, but I think when I cut it up, it ended up being 2, 5, 6, 1. I think I took the beginning chord and stuck it on the end. Um, yeah, so in terms of narrowness of sound ranges on Lyra and Strega, they both definitely do what they do. Um, and not much else. But I do think I can't speak to the lyric because I don't have it. The Strega is actually much more flexible than you would think. It absolutely does kind of just do its Strega thing, but if you are wanting it to be like kind of an aggressive lead or a really chunky bass, it can absolutely do those kind of tones as well without sounding too Strega-y. But it's really at its best when it's Strega-y. Yeah, so anyway, as I was saying, when I cut up these chords, I'm pretty sure I cut them up in the wrong. I cut them at the wrong spot because it's just these like loops that go on, and my ear was like, this is the beginning and this is the resolution, and so I moved the one, which is frequently. I mean, you can start with the one chord, but it does frequently sound like the resolution, so that's why I got moved to the end, and I just decided to roll with that. Uh, when I realized that it was fucked up. I was like listening to the loops and then looking at what I had written and then playing the chords along. And I was like, oh, hold on a second. That's not right. But so I was like, okay, actually, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. That we could do that. Um, and so yeah, so I just moved the chords, and so now it's like a 2-5-6-1 is what the chord progression is. Yeah, once it was in Ableton, then sort of really this track and the entire album really. It's a shame that my MPC is packed away. I would love to pull it out and sort of play you at least some part of the MPC versions of the tracks because you'd see that they are the core of them is there, but they are very different, very simpler, less nuanced, just less to them, less interesting overall. And I think that that's what I was getting stuck on is I just was not happy with the way they were coming together in the MPC. Um, interestingly enough, here actually, speaking of MPC, the bass, the core bass line for this. Oh, actually, you know what? See, that is Strega actually. I was lying. I said that this is the only Strega in here. I must have cut the other bass out. This is what I'm looking for. No, yeah. So I think I ditched the original bass that I had in here. So yes, you don't. I take good notes, but I do not take like this song has. One, two, three, 3.5 pages of notes about it, and there's probably some more about its mixing and stuff in the back. But I obviously made a bunch of changes that I did not necessarily make note of. It looks like I cut the original bass line out, which I think there is a mention here about change up the bass parts. So that's obviously what I did. I just cut out the original bass because it wasn't working for whatever reason, and just went with the Strega bass. And some of these now, like I said, a lot of this stuff came in. No, it's still solid. Oh, I see. Okay. Um, this is all, like I said, Micro Freak, which is one of my favorite instruments of all time. And I restricted myself from using the Micro Freak in the composition phase of this album because on my last two albums, it was basically my go-to synth for composition. And I didn't want to just repeat myself, basically. I wanted to do something different. Um, oh, you know what? See, this is shit notes. The more I listen to this and look at what I've written in here, this is actually the O-Coast. This track is the O-Coast. These other supporting ones are Micro Freak. Never mind. So this is the O-Coast part. The other part, yeah, this is this mid bass and this other bass. I think are the Strega. Again, if I had my MPC out, I could look and see there because things got transferred sometimes, names got changed, yada yada. So this is O-Coast here, and then this is the Micro Freak sort of supporting. These are all layered together. And together you get this sort of sound. Yeah, Salta, the Happy Accidents. I'm a big fan of those too. I'm a big Brian Eno fan, big Oblique Strategy fan. I used Oblique Strategies multiple times. I pulled multiple cards over the course of this project for each track. This one, actually, I wrote down some of them. Don't stress one thing more than another. That's an Oblique Strategy that I pulled and used in here. Honor Thy Air is Hidden Intention. Yeah, that's one. I didn't actually pull that one. I just made a note of it when I ran into that screw up that you mentioned. And then Repetition is a Form of Change is another one that I pulled and wrote down in here. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Brian Eno, Oblique Strategies, Finding Happy Accidents, etc. Yeah, the Micro Freak is, like I said, I had to restrict myself from it because it's very much my go-to synth. I just frequently want to go straight to it, and then in software I tend to go to Pigments. And then here's some other interesting sounds on here. This is Kauai K4. This is a synth that I wrote about this pretty recently. Playing this, it sounds kind of shitty, right? It does not sound amazing, but in context, this whole part sounds great. Just and this K4 part is an important part of it. It's not a synth that does a great job standing on its own always. And here's more of Micro Freak. And I think that's maybe going through tape. That's where this is coming from. Or it could just be it's just noisy for some reason. I can't remember for sure. I did not use a ton of tape on this album, definitely less than I've used in the past. So here's like some, for the transition, I used some Op6 FM patch. And then this is from Michael Boutrou. transition together sounds like this. And then, yeah, a little bit of dream synth at the very end here for the outro. It's just a big whoosh at the end as it goes out. A little bit of up six. So this is mostly those core sets. Some little bits of soft stuff here. And I ended up making this one the lead track off the album because it sounds like a good intro, and then the footsteps at the end. Um, it's like you're opening a door and going deeper into the album. And I like the idea of, like I mentioned, you have this mind palace and you're exploring it. You find a hidden door. Well, what do you find when you go through the hidden door, right? Well, obviously that's going to take you to some deeper level of awareness, some deeper level of being. Um, the album's theme is Mechanics of Mysticism, which was me. I was watching a lot of Esoterica. I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with that channel on YouTube. He is uh, an academic who studies the occult, religion, magic, these kind of things, mysticism through an academic lens. So he is not suggesting, for example, that ancient Jewish magic was actually magic in the sense like Harry Potter magic or whatever. It was, but the people who existed in that time and who did those rituals and magic, they clearly believed they were doing something, and clearly something was happening to them. And mystics in particular, mysticism, not so much like the folk magic where you're, you know, putting the blood from your thumb into the earth to try and get the crops to grow. Not so much that stuff, but more like the mystical pursuits, magicians and mystics who are trying to speak to God or angels or things like that. That's what interested me. And the question was like, well, what's really happening to these people when they're having these sort of mystical experiences, seeing God, talking to God? Yes, another fan in the chat. Yeah, everyone loves Esoterica who sees him. He is Justin is super cool. Um, I should reach out actually and send him the album. I don't think it's maybe up his alley what he would actually listen to, but since it is deeply inspired by him, he should probably at least have the opportunity to check it out. But yeah, so I was watching a ton of that stuff and asking, these kind of questions of myself, like, well, what actually happens when these mystics go into the magical cave and they're having some sort of visions. They're not faking it, right? Um, like mechanically, what's going on in their mind, physically, what's happening to them. What would that look like from the outside? And so, yeah, that's sort of the inspiration for this. And yeah, so what happens when you go through the hidden door in your mind palace, and what do you see on the other side? And that's the rest of the album, is sort of what you see on the other side. So that was the idea. The footsteps at the end that kind of came late in the process as I was sort of formulating this story, if you will, this narrative of like, okay, you're in your mind palace, you're looking around, and you find this hidden door. What do you do? Well, you're gonna go through it and walk to it and go through it, and that's the sound of the footsteps at the end. That's what that is supposed to be. Um, One of my big inspirations for my music is Future Sound of London and some of their contemporaries that did somewhat similar things, although I think that they're really the exemplar of this, where they sort of mixed in elements of music concrete, and also like visual or storytelling, like environmental storytelling, to sort of imply a story behind the music, an experience that's going on that's kind of parallel to what you're hearing. And yeah, and so that came out of that, and that was literally me. I took this little Zoom recorder, uh, and this little Zoom recorder here, and set it up in my hallway outside of my studio door. It has like a laminate floor, and I put on a pair of flip flops. Um, hit record, walked to the other end of the hallway, walked with kind of a heavy tread towards my door, got to the door, opened it, and then pulled it shut. And that's literally the sound that you hear on the album at the very end of the song, combined with some kind of whooshing sounds and synthesizer stuff to kind of give us a nice outro to the track. Um, and yeah, that's basically the inspiration and most of the how-to on this. When I brought this into this is what Ableton really allowed me to do. I think that I don't know that I would have gotten this detailed and granular. Um, it's just nice to be able. The new MPC update apparently does have an arrangement view that kind of looks like this. The old one did not, and I think that was what was part of what was slowing me down. The So putting this into Ableton allowed me to really visualize the song a little better and expand it, get more out of it. One interesting thing on this is I use every single native Ableton Live synthesizer on one track or another. Like this one looks like Drift. Is this Drift? I think this is Drift. Um, and like so as I just made sure that on every track at least one Ableton built-in synthesizer was used, and that over the course of them I used them all. It was just part of getting to know Ableton again. It had been years since I'd used it, and when I had used it before, I didn't have Suite. I had Standard, which doesn't have nearly the same layout. So I just made myself. Maybe this is Wavetable actually. Yeah, this is Wavetable. What am I thinking? Of course it's Wavetable. There's a Wavetable right there. I just made myself use every instrument just so I could get familiar with them, and it was cool because there's a lot of good instruments in this. Oh, and one other thing I kind of wanted to mention here is so the drum track it's pretty static throughout the thing. I did run it through tape, and so that runs in parallel. And for most of the track, there's none, and then here you can see it at about roughly halfway through, 1.5, 120. The non-tape version starts to fade out, and the tape version starts to fade in, and it gives it sort of the taped drums they definitely have a different sound to them. It's subtle, but if you listen closely on the thing, I think you can kind of hear as one comes in and the other goes out. This track here, it says taped do drums. So this is another thing. So I mentioned that this was like inspired heavily by Justin Sledge and whatnot, and it's also inspired by occult and ritual magic stuff, chaos magic most specifically. I am a believer in that stuff in the sense that I think that it helps you focus intention and be sharper about what you're doing, and it makes you think about things in a certain way. I don't really believe that you don't wave a wand and summon entities. I don't really believe that, but I do believe in doing things like making symbols real or bringing symbols into the real world. I'm not sure how to describe it because this is not something that I have studied extensively. It's just something I do. But for example, on this tab, this is called taped dew drums, and it's called that because this is and if you probably turn this a little bit too. Recognize this is sort of being in the background throughout much of this track. This is it's me banging on a empty Mountain Dew bottle with the drumstick. Is what it is. Through some effects, basically like contact miking it is essentially what I did when all was said and done. Because I think it's just pinging a filter, so it's usually as an impulse to ping a filter. But the reason I did that is because I have this weird Red Bull and Mountain Dew. There's also a bunch of Red Bull stuff on here. Caffeine addiction in general. But I drink coffee, Red Bull, and Mountain Dew are the three ways I get caffeine. And the album was very much fueled by caffeine, and I needed that caffeine to be represented in a very real way on here. So there's a shaker that, not on this track, but on a different track, that uses a bunch of cannabis seeds in a coffee jar because it was also fueled by cannabis. And so that's how I made a shaker for one of the tracks. And on this track, I used a Mountain Dew bottle through some different filters and whatever to make this part of the drum track because, again, the Mountain Dew fueled it, so it needed to have a presence on the album. But I also don't want to advertise for Mountain Dew, so it's not like something I made a big deal out of, but it's present on the album. And yeah, I keep the hats separate, like they're kind of running through their own bus. This stuff is all goes, it's all mixed together. The hats, though, I need to be able to mix separately. On this track, I did not actually run all the drums through any. Uh, they all have their own processing, each drum track. Like this one's got some pretty my normal channel strip, which I start every channel with, and then it's got some distortion, a drum bus, and then a little bit of EQ just to take off the mud, the below super low end, 30 hertz and below mud. This one is just, and I see this like I actually forgot to fucking set this compressor, like that should be turned on. Whatever, it still sounds fine on the album, so I'm not going to worry about it. It's funny, like you just miss things. Um, but this is just like my standard channel strip. This is just the drums running through tape. That's literally the same drum track, just running through tape. And then the do drums have their own processing as well. Again, just my basic channel strip. They're not super heavily compressed, in part because they were superly heavily processed outside of the thing, so they didn't need a lot of processing. And here, you get an auto filter. It's just the high end, warming up some of the highs. This is like a granular delay that gives it kind of a swooshy, washy effect on the hi hats. My mastering chain is pretty simple. Um, I mastered this, mixed and mastered all this myself. I did the mastering myself based on just stuff I could figure out. I don't use any isotope or RX, any of that shit, because I don't know what it's doing, and I don't like doing things that I don't understand. Like it just, if I could get good results, if I could push a button and it sounded fucking great, the master sounded great, I probably would use that stuff. But in the past, when I've experimented with it, I put it in and I pick a preset that seems like it should fit, and it sounds fucking terrible. I hate it. I hate the way it sounds. And so I pick a different preset, and it sounds terrible in a different way. And I start to play with all the software, all the hundreds of buttons, and I just could never figure out what the hell's going on. So I've done different things for mastering over the years, but I've slowly started to learn how to master. And so this is my mastering chain. I'll explain it real quick. I know this stuff's boring for people who don't do this, but for people who do it, it's frequently pretty, at least somewhat interesting. So a little bit of multiband compression. There's no real automation on any of this, as I recall. Uh, Oh wait, there's a little bit of okay. I'm wrong. Just the EQ. There's a little bit of automation on one of the EQ, uh, but otherwise it's all static. There's no automation on any of it. So I've got a multi-brand compressor first. That's just doing a little bit of compression here on the highs and lows. That's what multi-brand compressors do. Glue compressor set to a fairly moderate. It's the 2-to-1 ratio. Automatic release, 3 millisecond. Compression, so it's pretty gentle. Uh, minus 6 dB, 6.5 dBs, 3 dBs of makeup. So it's not doing a bunch. Saturator to add a little more color to it. Just warm it up a little bit, and then a little bit of EQ just to. You saw this one here is in the middle is doing a little automation because I think it got a little cluttered in that part when I was mixing, and so uh, I realized I could get like a little more loudness. I think if I brought just this one band down a little bit during one part, and then the limiter at the end, everything's mastered to -1. Just as you can see, not very much. I'm only driving 4 dBs a gain into the limiter. Little bit of saturation, little bit of color. This is the master. This is the color limiter that it comes with. Um, it's not Ableton's built-in limiter. It's the Max for Live. It comes with a Max for Live pack that you can get. It's called like Max for Live Essentials or whatever. It's free if you have Ableton, so I considered it a stock plugin. Try to do everything with stock plugins except for a few synthesizers. The only two things I used that weren't stock plugins were the I'm sorry, my brain just blanked. The Juno 6 chorus from Arturia and the Mellotron plugin from Arturia to get some fake tape effect. I think I used the tape thing one time, and I used the Juno chorus like in 3 different places because I love Juno chorus, and you can get kind of a Juno-like chorus, but it's a very good Juno chorus. So when I want a Juno chorus, I use the Juno chorus. I think that's basically it. Question mark. I don't know if anyone has any questions. This would be a good time to address them. I used 3 effects buses, a reverb, um, that I used Ableton's hybrid reverb on most of these, including on this one. So it has a convolution reverb and an algorithmic reverb jammed together, kind of a best of both worlds deal. Oh, this is probably worth mentioning. It's kind of interesting. This is a trick that I learned from Heimbach, is to put a distortion on one of your effect sends and send just a little bit of every track to it. So if you solo this track, kind of funny, if you solo this track, it basically sounds like a lo-fi version of the track at any given point. It's literally just always doing the whole track is going through it at varying low level. It does it, and the theory is it acts as a little bit of glue to glue the mix together. And in my experience, it does. It does that. That's what it does. You get some glue together from the distortion and makes your mix stick better, if you will. As I think I mentioned, these tracks down here are all muted. They're just the MIDI that I need in case I needed it to layer a different layer an instrument with just to get like a different tone or whatever, layer synthesizers. I would just drag these up and do that. And I just kept them at the bottom, muted. Otherwise, and there's nothing on the track for it. It doesn't even matter that they're muted because there's nothing for them to play through. And yeah, that's it. This I worked on this track on and off for 2 years because that's how long I worked on the album, and nothing was done before the end. I kind of finished everything up more or less at the same time. It was very iterative. Basically, especially once I got to this Ableton stage, I would just every day that I was working on it, I would just pull up the next track in the list, work on it until just go through it. Go, okay, I need to layer this synth. Oh, I don't like this part. See if I can re-record a different part here. And then when I would hit a wall, I would just hit save and move on to the next track. Um, and yeah, and that was how I did the entire second half of the album. Second half of the album process. It was the entirety of the album, but the second half of the process, just sometimes that would be 10 minutes on a track, sometimes it would be 4 hours, and then on to the next one. And just as soon as I was like, I'm not sure what to do next, just okay, hit save, move on to the next track. And yeah, it worked pretty well. The later on, I did this sort of production passes where once I was finished writing, for example, where I would just go in and be like, this synth is kind of weak, should we replace it? Or rather than replace, I would typically double things up. Like, oh, the tone here is kind of weird or wispy or whatever. I need this to be a little more beef, and you just layer it with something else and do that. Yeah, like I said, I don't use a lot of sends. This one has an echo send, which I don't even always have an echo send, so like a delay. But I don't know how many tracks. Did any of them? Yeah, I think I. Oh no, okay. It's used on the hi hats and the tape drums. Okay, so a few tracks do use that echo send, but not very many. Most of my tracks end up living, including most of my delays, and I use a ton of delay, live either on the individual tracks. Let's see, here's a delay, resonant glitch, just compression on that one, compression on that one. Yeah, see, auto filter, another delay, saturator, phaser, filter delay, delay, OTT. Here's that chorus, the Juno chorus. Sometimes you just got to do Juno chorus, It's got to be done. Um, yeah, OTT, delay, Juno chorus. Morphogene had this around the head auto panning, so it's flying around your head. Some auto filter to cut off the low end work. Yeah, just minimal effects on that. This had its own built-in effects. There you go. It's got some crazy vibrato. Delay auto filter. Yeah, when it comes to effects, like I'm not really doing anything too crazy. Lots of delay, lots of filters, fair bit of distortion. I like to run things through tape. I didn't do as much of it on that. And that's pretty much it. I'm not sure what else I can say about this. I mean, I could probably think of things to say forever, but if you have, like I said, if there's more questions, we could do that. And then otherwise, I'll probably just call that. I'm looking right now at my mixing notes to see if there's anything interesting in here about the mix. Don't remember this one being particularly difficult to mix. Added a bunch more reverb to it because it was kind of dry. Yeah, the low end was kind of busy. I think I did some EQing to, yeah, that's cut some low end out of the uh, different drum parts that were making the low end kind of cluttered, which made the mix a little better. How do you approach how many lines to put in a track? How many lines in terms of like different synth lines and whatnot? Is that what you mean? It's very organic for me. I start off, like I said, with a fairly simple jam between 4 to 6 parts, usually more like four, maybe five, very rarely six. Um, and then once I have sort of the heart of the track, that's those, I just listen to it over and over again and try and find where something's missing. So I definitely do not have a set idea of how much. Um, and I think if you were going to make a criticism of some of my music, it's that it's very busy, like packed to fucking brim. Like you could not shove another piece of anything in without the whole thing blowing into pieces. And arguably, it does blow into pieces. I'm sure there are people who listen to this and go, "That's too much. I cannot listen to that. There's too much going on. It's confusing. It's disorienting. I don't like that." So arguably, I have gone too much on some of these tracks. But yeah, I just keep going until I'm like, I don't think I can squeeze another one in. If anything, I think I should try and learn some restraint. There are probably tracks that could do as much with less, and it would be good for me to learn that. It's actually something I'm trying to work on. Um, I am a maximalist when it comes to this stuff in a lot of ways, so it's never going to not be there entirely. But it'd be maybe good to have a little more nuanced technique to where I can get a lot of mileage out of a few things at least sometimes, and even if I do mostly indulge myself. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, like I said, if I was going to make a criticism, if someone asked me to criticize my music, that's one of the things I would mention is it's probably too busy at least some of the time. Um, that I could just stand to do a little less at times. So, yeah. So I hope that answers that question authoritatively. Oh yeah, no, I didn't take it as a complaint. Anyone who's willing to sit here and listen to me talk about this song for an hour is obviously at least somewhat positively inclined towards what I'm doing. So I would not. I'm not taking anything anyone says at this point as a complaint. You can share any thought you have, and you will not hurt my feelings. It's totally reasonable. Yeah, we got like 10 minutes left, so I probably will go ahead and just think of things to say until 12:30. But yeah, ask questions if you have them, and then we'll just end when it's like right at the 1 hour mark. Trying to think if I used. Yeah, it would be interesting. Maybe I'll do a part two of this at some point, and when I have my MPC unpacked, when I can go through and kind of look at the tracks in there and see if this is in fact Strega. It sounds like Strega to me now, but I'd originally used one of the MPC sounds on this, and so it could be that I've just altered it and you know ran it through this amp sim and whatever else, and so now it sounds like Strega. But if I could look at the original files, I'd have a better idea. Um, chords here, so like yeah, here this is the wavetable. This is what I'm talking about, doubling chords. I just um, it says in here repetition is a form of change. That's one of the things that I. Oh, hey, Kaleidic. Yeah, cool. I recognize that. I recognize that username anywhere. Not least because my daughter actually goes by Kaleida, or used to. I don't think she does anymore. A very similar username years ago. So it's like, oh, hey, it always sticks out in my mind when I see it. But yeah, so like on this part, these chords sections, they're the same. Like I'm pretty sure that's just the exact same 8 bar phrase or whatever it is, 16 bar phrase rather, just cut and paste it. So the second time I did it, and this is something I did on a lot of these, I was like, that whole repetition is a form of change thing. Um, but I was like, that's true, but it's also, it needs to be a little more dynamic. I want when it comes to the second time, I want you to recognize that it's the same thing, but I also want it to be fresh in a way. And so a lot of times that I did, if I found myself, and this is very much something that came in later in the process, like while I was, for example, this is where I discovered that I had screwed up the chords. If you look at this, you can see that it's cut weirdly. So it ends with 1 bar of maybe I can, it ends with a bar here. It's like 4 bar phrase, 4 bar phrase, 4 bar phrase, and then 3 bar phrase or 7 bar phrase, and then this. So it's like that's weird, right? Well, that's why. That's because the chords got cut in a weird way, and so when I took the MIDI of the chords, I had to move the loop points. But when the second chord sequence came in, when you hear this for the second time, I was just like, oh hey, you know what? Like when you hear this again, let's give it some more presence. And so you probably don't, unless you're a really critical, close listener, when you're listening to the song on album on your headphones or jogging or whatever, you're not necessarily going like, oh wow, that sure has a lot more depth or a whole different tone going on when you hear it the second time. But on some level, I think you register it's, it was different the second time. So that's what I do. That's some of the things I do. Oh, I was going through here too to see if I could see what other soft synths I might have used. Like this one, it looks like I did not use a whole lot of soft synths. I used the wavetable synth. There's some op6 on here that I actually probably used. I did that part on the hardware, but then I was just like, oh, it's just easier just to record it as a soft synth. Yeah, yeah. I did not use a ton of soft synths on this. The Dream synth on the outro was about it. The rest of it was hardware synths of one sort or another. Yep. All right. Yep. 5 minutes left. I guess I could play the track from beginning to end. Might as well. I've talked about it a lot. So I'll wait just another minute or two, and then I'll play this and have it play us out. And yeah. So no more questions. No one else has any other questions, thoughts that they want to share. Shower me with compliments. Anything like that. Um, I'm just kidding about being showered with compliments. Obviously, I do not. That's not how I roll. Oh, I will have a bunch of free download codes released on both Mastodon and Blue Sky. I'll put 5 on each, 5 separate codes on each. So if you follow me on either of those platforms, you should be able to grab one of those. And yeah, if you message me that you are here in the chat, I'll just send you one directly. You don't have to try and compete for one of the free ones. If you come and hung out for all this time, I would put them in the chat here, but it's on my phone, not on my computer, yada yada. So it'd be a big pain in my asshole. But message me on any platform and say you were part of this and that you want one of those free codes, and I'll just send you one straight up. Thank you all for hanging out. You were all, I really appreciate it. It was nice to have a little bit of an audience, so I wasn't talking to myself the whole time. I'm going to play this song now, and then when it's over, I'm going to end the stream. So thank you again. Hope to see you next week. We'll be doing track 2, A Journey with the Plant Spirits, and I hope that maybe some of you will join us then. Bye. Thanks everyone again. We'll be back next week with Journey with the Plant Spirits breakdown, very similar to this. Take